Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're going to be talking about how I used a different eyeshadow palette every single day in the month of February. I think I'm going to title this video a palette a day for 28 days. So I obviously used 28 different eyeshadow palettes. I have them all laid out behind me throughout the month of February. So I'm going to be kind of like explaining how I selected each of the eyeshadow palettes. And actually, none of the eyeshadow palettes that I selected were any of the eyeshadow palettes that I have going in my 19 shadows in 2019 that I'm trying to pan. So my progress for my 19 shadows update this month is going to be minimal, but I did also try to include some shades from some of those palettes. So I actually ended up reaching into more than 28 palettes this month, but I like the Star of the Show palette was, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, basically I chose a different palette every single day to kind of be the main palette that I used, that I focused on, because I really this year want to focus on getting more love and more use out of my collection. And oftentimes I've brought like 4 or 5 palettes into my collection at a time, and some of them like it takes me months to even try them out, and then I try them like 1 or 2 times and then they just start collecting dust, because in 2018 I was just bringing way too much makeup into my collection. Which is why I'm currently on a low buy as well. So I'm just trying to get love out of my collection, figure out what I like, figure out what I don't like. So I figured randomly selecting 28 palettes to try in February would be a good way to kind of cycle through my collection. It caused me to realize a lot of eyeshadow palettes that I do love that haven't been getting reached for, as well as eyeshadow palettes that just are not my favorite anymore in my collection. So hopefully when I decide to do an eyeshadow palette declutter in the future, it will be a little bit more easier for me to make smarter decisions on like what I want to keep and what I do not want to keep. So if you guys are interested in hearing about the 28 eyeshadow palettes that I used in February, then just keep watching. But before we hop into that, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I would love if you would consider hitting that red subscribe button before you go. I post videos every single Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. But other than that, let's jump into the video. Alright guys, so I want to kind of explain my thought process going into this. I don't know if I was like hit on the head and had this wild idea that would be a great idea to use 28 different eyeshadow palettes and give myself that goal. So obviously I had to either do multiple looks on certain days, or I just had to do makeup every single day, which I'm pretty certain I did makeup every single day. There were certain days that I filmed that I would film and then I would take my makeup off and then do another makeup look and film again. So there's a lot of eyeshadow going on my eyes this month. I also wanted to select the 28 palettes through like randomly, because I didn't want to just go pick my 28 favorite palettes in my collection, and I also did not want to use any of the palettes that are currently sitting behind me on or in this little like letter keeper, because those are the eyeshadow palettes that I want to focus on this year for my 19 and 2019 for my 19 shadows in 2019 project pan. If you guys are curious about that project, I'll leave the video playlist for that link down below. Basically, I randomly selected 19 eyeshadows from different palettes, and I'm currently trying to pan those 19 eyeshadows. So I didn't want to select any of those palettes, seeing as I'll be using those constantly throughout the year. So I have all of my palettes listed out, and I randomly selected 28 numbers. If I got any of the palettes that correlated to those, if I got the number that correlated to any of those palettes, I just redrew. So I'm going to just quickly show you each of the 28 palettes and give you like a small brief review on my experience with the palette, so that if you're considering purchasing that palette, maybe it will help you make a better buying decision. But without further ado, let's jump into the palettes. So we have the first stack of 7 palettes, which I used in the first week. First up, I have the Mini Star palette by Natasha Denona, and this is just a little 5-pan eyeshadow palette. Now I do work 5 days a week, you guys, so some of the more colorful palettes I had to reserve for my days off, but this is one that I can get away with going to work. And when I first tried this palette, I really bought this palette because I was super excited for this blue shade, and honestly that blue shade is quite a letdown. But when I went back in to revisit this palette this month, I realized that even just going in with these 2 matte shades, you can create a beautiful matte look. This would be a really awesome palette to travel with if you are just looking for something easy and neutral every single day. This is also a really good one for me to pop in my like makeup bag that I use to get ready for work every day, because this because using just these two shades can create such a work appropriate look. And then I was also able to incorporate this beautiful green into the look, and the green is beautiful. The blue is a letdown, but I really enjoyed this green shade. And then the middle shade is also a beautiful champagne shade that you can pop in your inner corner. So once I revisited this, I actually ended up liking it more than I recall. And I think the reason that I was so disappointed when I first used this was, again, because of this blue shade. But it was awesome to get to use this because I realized, hey, if you're just going for an easy, neutral, everyday look, this is a really nice, small, compact palette that I can get that from. Okay, next up I have my Persona palette. And this is a beautiful palette that I purchased, I believe, around last April. And it was one that I was so excited to purchase. I brought it with me to Vegas, used it a couple times, really liked it, but then I don't know why. I feel like when I really like products, I don't want to use them because I fear I'm going to run out of them. It is so silly, but this is a beautiful palette. I believe I actually ended up using this on a day that I did not work, so I tried to go with something a little bit more dramatic. I used this Bossy shimmer shade, which I really like. It comes with a really nice dark brown matte. You have a bone colored shade, which I have decided this year I am going to try and cycle through all of my palettes that have bone colored shade and see how many bone colored shades I can pan this year. I thought that would also be a fun one. I'm just looking to like hit pan on as many products as possible. I should have come up with like a product hit pan goal for the year, but anyway. And then you also have just like these beautiful shimmers. I love this palette. I'm really glad that I pulled this back out. This is one that is going to be something that I want to cycle through this year and continue to use. This might be one that I bring with me again to Vegas this year when I go, just because it is really versatile. You get the browns, but then you also get like a purple to play with and this beautiful orange. And again, I really do love the shimmers and the way that they perform. You get such a high impact, and it's a really amazing palette in my opinion. So was really excited to get some use out of this. Then I had my little Tartelette Tease palette, and this actually was a palette that was in my 2018 project pan, and as you can tell, I have 4 pans in this little petite 6-pan palette. This one is a great one for work. I know when I go into this I can just create a really easy work appropriate look, which is exactly what I did. A part of me is like debating whether or not I declutter this, just because it's been in my collection a while, and now I have other palettes that like I can get the same effect from. This has obviously got quite a bit of love for me, but it is such a nice, cute, easy little petite palette to create looks out of. If you guys need just a little one for like work or, you know, travel, I would recommend this if you don't need a large variety of color in, you know, a little petite palette. So I always have really enjoyed this, and this was easy for me to use. Okay, so then I also had the Femme Rosa ColourPop palette, and it had been a while since I had used this, and I gotta say I was a little bit disappointed in this one. I just didn't enjoy the look that I came up with, and I don't know if it's because I just don't like the pinks, like pink eye looks on myself, or just perhaps it was the pink look that I created. I also found the shimmers in here to be a bit of a letdown, which is a bummer because I actually really do enjoy ColourPop palettes for the most part, and I remember that I really did enjoy this back in the day, but I'm probably potentially going to put this in a chopping block coming up, because I want to use it a couple more times and decide whether or not I want to keep it. But as of right now, I just was not that impressed with this one. Then I had another Tarte palette. This is my Tarte Love Trust and Fairy Dust, which I had going in a roulette project pan, and I do have pan on this shade right here. I really enjoy this palette, you guys. I kind of bought this on a whim when this first released. I thought it was like the dumbest concept ever, that it was like fairy dust and blah blah, but I love the mauve tones in here. And then you also get your like nice, just easy transition brown shade that you can use to kind of just pop in your crease if you're just like quickly going on the go. Really beautiful mauve shades to create a nice simple look. Beautiful shimmer shades. I really like this palette. So I had put this palette away for a bit because I had obviously been working on panning it, and I had gotten a ton of experience with it. It was nice to pull it out again, you know, just to have some fun with it again. I'm going to put it away for a little bit, but I could definitely see myself pulling this in a Shop My Stash in the months to come, especially when I start to focus on my purple shades that I'm trying to pan again. I'm going to take a break from the purples, I think, in the month of March. But when I start to play with purples again, this is a beautiful palette to pull some purple inspiration from as well. Okay, then I had my e.l.f. Mad for Matte palette, and I was concerned to use this again because I thought that this had given me an eye reaction in the past, but I enjoyed the way it performed on the eyes in the past. So I'm happy to announce that I did not get an eye reaction from this, and I really enjoyed this. All right, we got the toddler napping over here. Time to get back to what I was saying about the e.l.f. Mad for Matte palette. I'm happy to announce this did not give me any sort of eye irritation or reaction. Freaking love this. I think this is a phenomenal palette if you, first of all, if you are on a budget or you just don't enjoy spending a lot of money on makeup or eyeshadow palettes specifically, and if you don't use makeup that often, like if you just need something that's going to give you a quick, easy, neutral look that you can wear to work, you could probably build this up to create like a beautiful smoky eye if you're going out at night. I'm not well versed or talented in like the whole super smoky eye look, but I was able to create a really beautiful matte look just for like everyday wear for work. I really enjoy this. This is definitely one I would consider traveling with too. This lasts a really long time. It's not like typical drugstore eyeshadow where like you get to work after your 30-minute commute and you're like, oh, all my eyeshadow is now missing. This formula is really nice and it lasts a really long time. Now, is it like the best eyeshadow formula? No, but for $10, I think it is well worth it. This is definitely one I'm going to pull into my makeup bag where I get ready for work. I think this is phenomenal and I'm super happy. Sorry, my toddler has a cough. Super happy that I pulled this out because otherwise it would have just sat there and I would have looked at it in fear, and I didn't need to fear it. So really happy, really like this palette quite a bit. And then the last palette from the first week was the Pure Visionary palette, and I've said this on my channel before. I was so excited to purchase this. I saw this in store, they were out of it at my Ulta, and then all I could do was think about how I needed this palette, which is why I felt like I knew I needed it. And then I purchased it, and I am not kidding, it sat for months before I even tried it. Like, that is how bad like my makeup just problems are or were. I do intend to do like a makeup addiction or like my issue with probably shopping addiction in general. I do want to do one of those videos, maybe like get ready with me style formula. I just haven't like completely composed or collected my thoughts on that. But anyway, I finally pulled out the Pure Visionary palette, and what I'll say about this is, so every single shade in here is more of like a sheen, so I do like to pair it with another palette to like kind of build up like a matte crease, and then I go in and usually just pop one or two shades of this in. There are some really, really beautiful shades, like Girl Boss. Oh, my hand is like ridiculously dirty right now from other swatches. Girl Boss is just this beautiful sheen. I wonder if you could get away with this as a highlight potentially. But I did also try using this without matte shades, and I went in with some of the darker sheens, and I was able to create a look that I actually really did enjoy. Now, do I think that this is going to be a palette for everyone? Absolutely not. In fact, this to me I feel like is more of just like a makeup collector sort of item, and I don't even know if you can still get this. I don't necessarily regret that I purchased this, but this is definitely not one of my favorite palettes. I'll still reach for it from time to time. But the formula is just like a little bit difficult to work with in a sense that it's just, they're like sheen. They're definitely a softer sort of formula, so you just have to be careful with the way that you're working with the shades. So this definitely was a bit of a letdown, just remembering like how I initially felt about the palette, but I was happy to end up pulling this one and getting some use out of it. Alright guys, week 2 palettes. Jumping right in. So, up first, I have the Pat McGrath, what do they call this? Oh shoot. I believe this is, the Mothership Sublime. This is the 6-pan eyeshadow palette, and again, I purchased this palette, super excited about the blue, and I gotta say, the blue is a little bit of a letdown. The 2 mattes in here are super nice, easy to use. You can use this to create a nice neutral everyday eye look for work. You have this beautiful champagne color that I really do love, and then I also really enjoy this shade up here. What I love about this palette and appreciate about this palette is I feel like it is unique in a sense of like the shades offer like, okay, this shade is so freaking cool. It's like a red that shifts to this like darker green kind of situation. I don't know if you'll even be able to like see. It's a really cool shade. So the eye look that I created this month was something kind of surrounding this blue. I think maybe I'll try and reach into other palettes and pair this blue with eyeshadows from a different palette. I just didn't love the way that it paired with what I tried to create out of this palette alone. So that being set aside, I really enjoy the other 5 shades. Now this is a really expensive palette. Do I think it's going to be for everyone? Absolutely not. The packaging drives me a little bit crazy. I know it's like, it would be kind of nice to like prop this up if you need it, but like I really don't mind holding up a mirror, and it's just like, I don't know, it's just awkward. But the packaging is really cool, really fancy, really nice. And this wouldn't steer me away from still wanting to try one of the larger Mothership palettes from Pat McGrath. I'm definitely still interested, even though they're $125, which is absurd. Again, do I think this palette is for everyone? No, but if you've been considering it, it does offer some pretty unique and fun shades. I think if you're a makeup collector, if you like to work with different textures and really different like dimensional tones, you would probably really get along with this. I also went in with my Tartelette in Bloom and hit pan on a second shade in this palette. I finally hit pan on Funny Girl, which was super, super exciting. I've also hit pan on Flower Child. This is like a staple OG palette in my collection that I just feel like I could never declutter. I've considered like just repurchasing this and decluttering this one, but for some reason this just like has sentimental value to me because I can literally remember going to Sephora to buy this and being so excited about it. It was when I was first getting into YouTube, first getting really excited about like expanding my makeup horizons outside of like MAC, which is primarily what I was using in college, MAC and Urban Decay. So this has some sentimental value to me. I really love this palette. This is such an easy, like beginner friendly palette. This is so easy to travel with, such a work friendly palette if you love neutral tones. That is, this is a very neutral tone palette, but it's so easy to create the looks. You can see the vision. If you're not a very creative person and you just need like a palette that's easy, that's going to lay your look out for you, you definitely get that from this. So love the Tartelette in Bloom palette, but definitely going to put this one away for a while. I have worked on this palette quite a bit in the last few months, so I'm ready to put it away for a hot second. I also pulled in the Balm Meet Matchmaker, and the first time I used this I was not uber impressed with it, but the second time, this is why I'm glad I did this. I actually really enjoyed this palette, and I am definitely excited to cycle this in and shop my stash to get even more use out of it. I think that this is nice because it offers work appropriate neutral toned looks, but then you are also offered some fun shimmer shades to play with. So I think this is a super versatile palette, and I love the way that it's laid out with a matte shade and then a shimmer shade. I think that's really smart, and I really enjoyed this palette. Love it. I ended up getting this in a Tribe beauty bag, so I didn't end up paying like full price for this by any means. And I know Balm usually does semi-annual half off sales, so if you can get this at half off, I definitely think it's worth it. I don't know what it is full price. I feel like they're usually in the like $30 range. I would maybe try and wait to see if you could get it on sale. But I did enjoy this palette, and I definitely do plan to cycle this in an upcoming Shop My Stash. Alright, you guys, up next we have my Viseart Petite Pro palette, and I've also said this on my channel before. This has been a real bummer, letdown, and disappointment for me, and I feel the same way after using it again this month. I used this on a day that I went to work. I created a pretty neutral look, but what I find is I just have to do so much building with these shades, and that may be because I know Viseart is typically more of like a makeup artist brand, so I know maybe they don't want anything that's super heavily pigmented right away, but for me it's just too much building and I just don't enjoy it. I don't think the shimmers are that good even with a wet brush, and yeah, this one just like, it's a bummer. It's like $30, super small pan sizes, and just like not impressed with any of them. So I know a lot of people really do love the Viseart Pros. Even I've gotten a couple comments being like, you gotta keep going, you gotta keep giving it a shot. But I just am not that impressed. One palette that I was super impressed with, and I forgot how much I love this palette, is the Milani Bold Obsessions palette. Ugh, there we go. This is what it looks like. Oh my gosh, you guys, I did not realize like how intense the shimmers are in here. It is insane. Like, wow, they are beautiful. So I ended up creating a pretty neutral look. I used this on a work day. I ended up using this shade, this shade, this shade, and topping it with the shimmer shade, and I really liked it. This is definitely a palette that I want to cycle in more often. Definitely want to cycle it into a Shop My Stash. I'm really happy that I pulled it back out because I saw this one sitting on my shelf and I was like, yeah, like it's fine. It's a drugstore palette. Like, I'll pull it out at times, but I really enjoyed this. I think it's a great palette for a phenomenal price. So I think you can pick these up. I think you can even get these actually at Target now. So Target run and done. Another palette that I love, that I was so happy to get to use this month, is the Dose of Colors and Desi and Katie Friendcation palette. I love this palette. I ended up wearing this to an Eric Church concert this month. That was a hoot and holler and good time. And I think that the mattes in here are phenomenal. You can create the most beautiful neutral matte eye look with this, and then you're like offered these just beautiful shimmer shades. Some have like a bit of a duochrome to them. I love this Dirty Money shade. I believe that's what it's called. Yep. I also really enjoy this Gold Just a Kiss shade, and then these blue shades. I don't know how well it's gonna swatch for me. Blue and like purpley blue shades are also super fun. Like that purpley blue, the swatch isn't the best, but I'm definitely gonna have to pull this out and play with that, especially with all the purple eye looks that I've been doing lately. But really happy that I got this palette. I did end up getting mine half off, so it wasn't the $55. So I'm happy I got it at half off, but super happy to have this in my collection. And then I got a Wet n Wild palette. This was the Just a Peach palette. I ended up using this on a work day, which was super easy. So this is what the Just a Peach palette looks like. I ended up using this transition shade down here, and then I deepened it with the dark brown shade. And then I also, I believe, added in some of this like terracotta shade, and then I topped it with this like red orange shimmer. I really actually enjoyed using this. Now, the Wet n Wild palettes are not my absolute favorite. Again, it's a good drugstore option. Ranks up there with e.l.f. in my opinion. It'd probably be Milani, e.l.f., then Wet n Wild, and this one is not my favorite of like the four, even though I know they've released more. Oh, I really want to try the one with like the purples in it. So this one isn't my favorite of the four that I have. I really do enjoy the Comfort Zone one. That would probably be my top, but it was nice to pull this out and use this because too often this just gets like pushed to the wayside because I want to use my other formulas. So this was a nice way to just pull this out and get some use out of it. I don't know if I'll cycle this in too much. Maybe if I do like an all drugstore look, if you guys would be interested in a video like that, then I could definitely pull this out for that. I actually do kind of want to play with this like purple shade. I'm so into purples lately. On my dirty hand, here it is. That looks pretty. So eventually I'll pull this back out. It was nice again to use. Not a favorite, but it was fine. All right, you guys, week 3 palettes. Starting with this Marc Jacobs limited edition holiday palette. Whew. This is one that was a huge letdown for me just based on the price and like the quality I felt like I got. However, rather than playing with more of the mattes this time around, I played around with mostly the shimmers, and I gotta say there are a couple of shimmers that I really did kind of fall in love with. I'm gonna swatch 3 of them for you. So you have this like purpley blue, then you have this like super like icy pink, and then this like icy blue green, which I really enjoyed. So I enjoyed pulling this out to get to play with some of the shimmers, and this is one that I do want to kind of keep around so that I can use the shimmers in here as like lid toppers for fun. The mattes in here, not super impressed with, but was happy to pull this out because again, I paid a pretty penny for this, and this is one that just has sat in my collection because I knew I was disappointed in the matte shades, which just didn't inspire me to reach for this. So yeah, that's what I have to say about this. Next up, we have my Modern Renaissance, and I had so much fun using this month. I created a super red look, and I think I filmed with that red look. I think I did. I should have taken pictures every day, but some of it I was like getting ready for work and I was like, okay, I'm not going to take a picture. Anyway, this is what my modern Renaissance looked like. And for the first time ever, I played with the Venetian red as well as Love Letter. Those two have always been super intimidating to me. So this time around with this palette, I really stepped outside of my comfort zone. I was really happy with the results and I definitely want to pull this one out more this year. Okay, so I ended up getting the Serpentina palette by Kat Von D as one of my random ones, and I know Kat Von D is a little controversial, but this is something I had obviously before controversy struck with that, so I did decide to use this just because like the money had already been spent. And the shade that I really wanted to use was this Scarb shade because it's like the only reason I keep this palette around. It is so beautiful. Such a beautiful shade. So I actually ended up mixing, because I feel like you can't create a look out of this palette, I ended up mixing that palette with my Saharan palette by Juvia's and kind of killed two birds with one stone with this. And I ended up doing like a mostly like warmed tone look. And then I tossed this on like in the middle, and I actually really did enjoy the look that I came up with. I even tapped some of this Kaya color on, which is pretty similar in tone, just a little bit more like blue-gray. I don't know if you'll be able to tell on camera, but I was really happy with the look that I came up with. I love all of the Juvia's Place palettes. I liked the shade from the Serpentina palette. I don't think the Serpentina palette, I shouldn't have purchased this. This was definitely something that like I haven't gotten my money's worth out of, which I want to film one of those videos, but this is definitely one of them. Also got some use out of the Nubian 2 by Juvia's. I did a throwback Thursday using this and the Saharan palette, so if you guys are interested, I'll link that if you want to see the look that I came up with. This is destroyed because my daughter got into this when she was like 2 years old. And good old daughters like to create a mess, but I still loved the look that I came up with this palette, and I really want to use a shade, or I really want to use this Egypt shade. I actually think I used Egypt in the look I created, but it was fun to like use greens or use colors that are outside of my comfort zone. This is one that I want to pull. I want to start playing around with my Juvia's Place palettes. Maybe I'll do like a month of Juvia's Place, but also I gotta focus on these. Like I said, I don't know if I got like hit on the head and just like wanted to take on too much with like all these like ideas about like using a million eyeshadows in the month of, or in the year of 2019, but really happy that I pulled this out and got some use out of it. Really enjoyed this palette. Alright, next up we had my Amethyst palette and Huda Beauty Amethyst palette, and I'm not gonna lie, I did use this palette, but I used it in conjunction with some of my palettes back here that I'm trying to pan. I believe I used it with Prism and with the Carly Bible palette. I ended up using this shade right here, which is a really pretty like pinky gold shade, and then I believe I used this middle shade as well, which I'm not that impressed with. That took a lot of building up, but I used those two shades. Now this is just, I'm happy that I have this in my collection. Alright, it's getting harder to film with the toddler. This is why I try and wake up early, and some days it just doesn't happen. Anyway, this palette I'm happy to have for purples, but I will say it's not a palette I feel like I can create a full look with. So usually I just go in and use these as lid toppers. I'm not a huge fan of the matte purple shades in here, just because I'm never doing like a full purple look. So I like this. I don't necessarily think, unless you love purples, I don't think you need this in your collection. I'm happy to have it just because I love the Huda Obsessions palettes, like her 6 original. So I wanted to have a couple of her limited edition amethysts. And I wanted to do ones that weren't just like the topaz one, or the one that like would be more easily, you could easily create easier looks out of, or would be easier to create looks out of. I wanted to do something that was going to bring more color into my collection, so that's why I have this. Again, I'm not mad that I have this. I don't think that this is going to be for everyone. Those are kind of my thoughts on that. And then I also went in with my Viseart Warm Matte Palette, and I'm happy that I pulled this in because for a long time I thought this was a huge disappointment. In fact, I have considered decluttering this before, and while I don't feel like it's worth the $80 price point, the more that I've worked with it, the more I appreciate the formula. It's super easy to work with. It blends really well. The colors blend well together. So this is amazing for obviously everyday neutral looks. I can use this a lot for work. I definitely see myself cycling this into my Shop My Stashes this year, and I was really happy to get to use this. This is part of the reason that like I appreciate why I did this, because it really forced me to like learn formulas from other palettes that I hadn't had as much experience with. And just work with them a little bit more. And yeah, I'm kind of like coming around, changing my mind about the Vizier palettes. Still don't think they're worth the $80, but it is a good formula in my opinion. All right, you guys, and we are finally down to the final 7, the last week. Starting right in with my Natasha Denona Lila palette. I love this palette. I don't think you can go wrong. I typically tend to reach into this more for the shimmer shades rather than the mattes. This is one I definitely want to focus on more this year because I do, bless you, I do love this palette. And I want to play around with the mattes a little bit more too, but I love reaching into this for the shimmers. So I was really excited to pull this in, and this is definitely one that I'm going to cycle in through my Shop My Stashes this year. Then I had my Huda Beauty Warm Brown Obsessions palette, which I was not mad to get. I love this palette. I feel like I like this more in the fall time. Right now I'm kind of digging like more cool toned looks, more purples. I had some fun with reds, which I know is more warm toned, but this is a staple fall palette in my collection. I love this palette. I don't think you can go wrong. This is definitely a top palette for me in my collection, and only 27 bucks. These are so easy to travel with. I rave and recommend the Huda palettes, the Huda Obsessions palettes all the time. Literally, you can't go wrong. You guys just find one that you feel like suits you and you will be happy. I have heard like a couple people say they don't like it, so like I don't want to speak for everyone, but in my opinion these are so good. And then I also got my Dose of Colors a Baked Browns palette, which I was super excited about. I love the Dose of Colors 5-pan eyeshadow palettes. They do have a lot of kick up, so if you don't like that I would probably skip these, but in my opinion, you can't go wrong with these. These are super easy to travel with as well. You're a little bit limited in the looks that you can create, but that's not always a problem. These are super easy to create easy work looks without having to think too much. I love to travel with these palettes. Cannot go wrong. Was really excited to use this. Another neutral palette, I have the Zoeva Cocoa Blend palette, which I also really enjoy for work looks. I was using this a ton towards the end of 2018. My favorite look with this is to go in with Substitute for Love. I wouldn't be surprised if I hit pan on this year, even though it's not in like my project. And then I love to take Freshly Toasted like in the outer corner. If I'm not going to work and I'm looking for a more dramatic kind of a look, I will then take Beans Are White, deepen up the crease, and then I will go in with Subtle Blend all over the eye. I really enjoy that look. I do find sweeter ends to be a little bit of a letdown, as well as warm notes, unless you do a ton of building. I used to think that I was really disappointed in this palette, but then I kind of realized it's just a nice subtle neutrals palette, and once I kind of accepted that for what it is, I really like the formula. The mattes are really, really good. They have come out with, Zoeva's come out with a couple of palettes lately that look really interesting to me, so considering possibly purchasing, but I am trying to only bring in 5 palettes into my collection this year. And ABH just released their teaser for the Riviera palette, and that will be my first palette purchase of the year. I can already tell you guys that. I have 2 more ColourPop palettes. For some reason, the ColourPops were, the random number generator was loving on it. Yeah. So I have the Dream Street palette by Kathleen Lights. Love this palette. I think it's great. I cannot wait to pull this out in the summertime. This is kind of a summertime staple for me, so you'll definitely be seeing this in my summertime Shop My Stashes for this month. I just went in with a neutral look, kind of used this, and this matte, and then it went in with this shimmery shade to create like more of like a, it was kind of like a smoky yet subtle look. Really enjoyed that, but definitely want to play around with like this beautiful kind of like blue champagne sort of shade. I don't know how that's coming across on screen, but want to play around with the blues a little bit more come the summertime, but was not mad to pull this in. I love the Dream Street palette. If you can still get your hands on it, which I believe you can, it's definitely worth it. Then I also pulled the ColourPop Element of Surprise palette. This was my first pressed eyeshadow palette from ColourPop. I really enjoy this one. Again, I went for a neutral look to wear to work for this one, but I also have created a lot of like warm toned red looks with this palette that I have really been enjoying, or really enjoyed in the past. This is one that I definitely want to cycle in, in a Shop My Stash, and I'm not gonna lie, I am definitely gonna pull this to use that purple shade in one of my purple looks. I'm like, every purple look like starts out as the same, and then I look for like a new combo of like shimmers I can use, and I feel like I don't have a purple that's currently like this or that I've tried. So when we get back to the purple train, maybe we'll go back to that in April. Like I said, I think I'm going to take a break in March from the purples, but I'm definitely going to pull this out for that purple for sure. And then I'm actually filming this on the 28th, so the eyeshadow palette that I have on my eyes today is the ABH Sultry palette. This has been in my collection for a couple months, and today was the first day I used it, so that's super pathetic. And actually this is one that I was like, I foregoed one of the other palettes that I randomly selected and was like, okay, I'm pulling this to use this because it's ridiculous. I haven't even tried it yet. And I'm not gonna lie, at first when I was looking at this, I was like really struggling to come up with a look that I felt like I could create. I went in with Twig, which I will say has a ton of kickback. Sorry, I just got distracted because I realized how many times in this video I feel like I've said I'm not gonna lie, and people have commented about that before and been like, I'm not gonna lie, and I'm like, oh god, embarrassing. So anyway, Twig has a ton of kickback, so be weary of that. Then I went in with a Dystopian to deepen up the crease, and I went in with Rose Quartz all over the lid. I feel like I'm not gonna be super impressed with my blending skills when I go back to edit this video and see how the eye look actually looks. For some reason I always think my eye look looks okay, and then I go to edit my videos and I'm like, girl, look at the frickin' patch eyeshadow look you have going on today. But never have time to like refilm or anything, so that is what life is. I am definitely going to see if I can pan this fresh shade. This is again a bone colored shade, and I'm just going to see how many bone colored shades I can pan this year. That is like a super goal of mine. I also used Pearl on my inner corner. Pearl is beautiful. Rose Quartz is beautiful. I want to create a look with Cinder, Teak, and Ember. Those are also very interesting to me. I don't see myself using Slate or really Cyborg much. Potentially Birch, potentially Bloom. I don't know. Like, I don't know how to incorporate Bloom. Ooh. That isn't as like, that's like a silvery shade. Oh, that is beautiful. I do intend to use Cyborg. That is beautiful. So the only shades I don't necessarily 100% see myself using are Slate and Bloom. Newer, I don't go in with a black much, and lately I've been going in with Obsidian from the oh my gosh, the Prism palette. So I'm trying to like focus on that black shadow. This is like the first black shadow I've used in my life, because I've always been terrified. But anyway, I do enjoy, or have enjoyed this so far. I definitely need to play around with it a little bit more. I want to do like a ranking my ABH palettes, which, I should wait till after the Riviera palette comes out so I can include that in there, where I like rank and talk about like which one I think is best for whom. Definitely need to play around with this a little bit more, but so far I do like the look that I created. But after that, you guys, I don't know how long this video is gonna end up being. Those are the 28 palettes that I ended up using in the month of February. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Definitely let me know what palettes you were using and loving in the month of February. Like I said in the introduction, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, don't forget to hit the red subscribe button before you go, and also hit that bell for notifications if you are interested. Other than that, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye. Bye.